I'm not the pretty one you ordered.
The sky hung low and heavy over the Texas plains, the horizon blurring between the coming storm and the fading sun. A streak of orange light glowed against the endless sweep of dust as an old pickup truck rumbled down the dirt road, its wheels crunching through gravel and grit. Inside, a woman sat stiffly in the passenger seat, her gloved hands clenched around a small, worn suitcase. The driver, a quiet man from the town's general store, tried to make conversation twice, but she barely heard him. Her thoughts were louder than the engine. Her name was Lena Walker, and she was on her way to meet the man who had written her 2 letters, both polite, brief, and practical. He needed a wife for the ranch. She needed a way out of the orphanage she'd been tending for years, where her dreams had slowly dried up like the riverbeds outside Amarillo. The truck pulled up to a small white chapel standing lonely beside a field of wild grass. The driver tipped his hat. "That's the place. Dawson'll be waitin' inside." Lena stepped out, her boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. The air smelled of rain and pine. She smoothed her dress, a simple cream cotton that had seen better days, and looked at her reflection in the window. A faint scar ran from the corner of her jaw to her ear, a souvenir from a barn accident when she was 16. Her hair was neatly pinned but too plain to draw attention. She had no illusions about how she looked. Still, she had come. Inside, Caleb Dawson stood near the front pew, hat in hand. He was taller than she expected, broad-shouldered, his shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal sun-darkened arms. His face was quiet, marked by years under the sun and loss that needed no explanation. The chapel's wooden floor creaked as he turned at the sound of her footsteps. Lena froze in the doorway, rain flickering against the window behind her. "Mr. Dawson." He nodded once. "You must be Miss Walker." "I am." Her voice trembled, just slightly. "Though I think there might have been a mistake." Caleb frowned. "A mistake?" Her eyes dropped to the floor. "I'm not the pretty one you ordered." She said it plainly, without bitterness, just the weary honesty of someone who'd had to tell the truth before it could hurt worse later. The agency must have sent the wrong file. There was another woman, Annabelle Reed. She was the one with the photograph. The one with the red dress and the curls. Caleb was silent for a long moment. The only sound was the ticking of the small brass clock near the pulpit and the low rumble of thunder rolling across the plains. He took a slow step forward. "You came all this way to tell me that?" She swallowed, unsure what answer he wanted. "I just thought it best to be honest before we start something built on the wrong impression." Caleb studied her for a moment that felt longer than it was. Then, setting his hat down on the pew, he said quietly, "Miss Walker, I didn't order a pretty one." Her head lifted in surprise. "I asked for someone steady," he went on, his tone even but kind. "Someone who knows what it means to stay when the roof leaks and the land gets dry. Pretty don't mend fences or face winters alone. I've seen enough beauty that blows away with the dust." Lena blinked, unsure how to respond. Her heart beat hard against her ribs. "But you haven't even seen me smile yet," she said softly. A small smile tugged at the corner of Caleb's mouth. "I reckon I just did." Outside, rain began to fall. Slow, heavy drops that drummed against the roof. Lena looked down at her suitcase, then back at the man who stood before her. She had come expecting rejection, maybe pity. But what she saw in his eyes wasn't disappointment. It was something quieter, recognition. She took a hesitant step forward. "You're sure you don't mind that they sent me instead?" Caleb shook his head. "If you can bake bread, keep your wits in a storm, and don't mind a man who talks more to his horses than people, then no, Miss Walker, I don't mind at all." Her laugh came unbidden, light and nervous but real. "I can't promise much, Mr. Dawson. But I can promise I don't scare easy." He smiled then. Fully, deeply. "Then we'll get along just fine." The storm outside grew stronger, rain sweeping across the plains in silver sheets. Lena set her suitcase down by the pew and glanced up at the wooden cross hanging above the altar. Maybe this wasn't the life she'd imagined, but for the first time in years, she felt like she'd arrived somewhere she could stay. And as Caleb offered her his hand, calloused, warm, and steady, she took it without hesitation, the thunder echoing like a vow between them. The rain had passed by dawn, leaving the Texas air cool and sharp. The ground outside the Dawson Ranch glistened with puddles, and the smell of wet soil mixed with the sweet scent of mesquite. Lena stood on the porch, watching the horizon where the sky met the earth, pale blue and endless. She had never seen land stretch this far, nor felt so small standing in it. Her mornings began before sunrise. The first week, she fumbled through the chores, trying to recall the rhythm of ranch life she'd once known as a child. The barn was her first test. Stubborn horses, squeaky stalls, and the sharp kick of hay dust in her throat. Caleb worked beside her, mostly silent, showing her how to handle the rope, where to stack the feed, when to give the mare her oats. He never raised his voice, never corrected her harshly, and somehow, that made her try even harder. At night, when the lamps burned low and the cicadas hummed, she'd find herself stealing glances at him across the dinner table. His face, lined by the sun, looked softer in the glow. There was patience in his every motion, even in the way he buttered his bread. He wasn't a man who filled the air with words. His silence had weight, not distance. The townsfolk had been curious when they heard Caleb Dawson took a mail-order bride. Some pitied her, others whispered that she'd fooled him. But Caleb paid no mind to talk, and in time, neither did she. Weeks turned to months. The ranch began to feel less like a stranger's land and more like her own. Lena learned to mend fences, patch roofs, and even ride, though she still clung to the saddle tighter than she liked to admit. She found beauty in small things. The warmth of the kitchen stove, the laughter of the ranch hands, the way the sunset turned everything gold. Still, some nights, doubt crept in like cold wind under the door. She'd stare at her reflection in the wash basin, plain face, scar at her jaw, hands worn from work, and wonder if he ever wished the agency had sent Annabelle Reed instead. One evening, as the sun dropped low behind the hills, she found Caleb leaning on the fence, staring out at the cattle grazing in the fading light. The sky was painted in fire, streaks of orange and crimson, the wind carrying the faint hum of crickets. She walked to him quietly, wrapping her shawl tighter. "You could have sent me back," she said softly, her voice nearly lost to the wind. He didn't turn right away. "Why would I do that?" She gave a small, uncertain smile. "There were others prettier, younger, maybe better suited for all this." Her hand gestured toward the wide expanse of land, as if it too might judge her. Caleb turned then, resting his forearms on the fence, eyes steady on her. "You think that's what this life needs, pretty and soft?" She hesitated, unsure if it was a question or a challenge. He shook his head, gaze drifting to the horizon. "I've seen men marry for looks, Lena. But when the crops fail, when sickness comes, when the roof leaks and there's no one left to call for help, beauty don't hold a man together." Lena blinked against the sting in her eyes. He looked at her then, fully, the woman who'd come by mistake and stayed by choice. You got a quiet strength, he said. You don't scare easy. You don't run when things turn hard. That's the kind of pretty a man can build a life around. The words hit deeper than she expected. For a long moment, neither spoke. The sky dimmed, the world softened into twilight, and the air between them thickened with something unspoken. Not passion yet, but something stronger, steadier. Finally, she smiled, shy but sure. You say that like you've been looking for it a long time. I reckon I have, he said, voice low. Didn't know I'd find it by accident. She laughed, a sound he'd come to listen for. As the first stars appeared, Caleb reached for her hand, rough palm meeting hers, both calloused by the same hard work. It wasn't a gesture of possession but of promise, quiet, honest, and real. Come on, he said softly. Storm's clear now. Sky's something worth seeing. They stood together under the vast Texas night, the stars scattered bright above them. The land around them breathed again after the rain, full of life and new beginnings. Lena leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel misplaced. The mistake that brought her here had somehow led her home. And as Caleb Dawson looked out at the horizon, at the woman beside him, at the land he'd built with his own 2 hands, he smiled. You're all I needed, he whispered. The wind carried his words away, but Lena heard them clear as a vow, wrapped in the sound of crickets and the slow hum of the night. A love not built on beauty, but on the quiet certainty of belonging.